In this video, I'm going to be talking about edge banding, more specifically, the benefits to edge banding and why we do it. If you can master this skill, it's really going to open up all kinds of possibilities for you in anything that you build moving forward. Now, as woodworkers, when we first start out, I know I can speak from my own experience. When I would go to a home store and I would see a big sheet of plywood like this sitting on the shelf, I would immediately look at that and go, it's cheap. Right? There's no place for that in the furniture that I'm building. Now, fast forward years later, I actually see the value and I actually try to use this material as much as I possibly can because it has so many benefits to it. This right here is a piece of prefinished birch. And the thing that I want to highlight there is that it is pre-finished, right? That's something you traditionally cannot get in regular hardwoods, nor would you really want that because you have to work the material and get it to the finish quality and apply your finish. Well, this is already done. So this comes in really handy when you're building casework, cabinets, built-ins, things like that, and you don't want to spend the time doing the finishing on the internal portions of the cabinet. So this can be a really big benefit. It also provides a really nice work surface because things have a tendency not to stick to it as much as something that doesn't have finish on it. Moving on into the middle, we have something called Baltic Birch. Now, the big difference between Baltic Birch and this right here is the obvious addition of the plies. Now, what do all of those plies mean? Well, one, it's going to add a lot of stability, which we'll come back to. But one thing that I want to highlight, we are talking about edge banding, but something like this has a much more decorative edge. So you actually could take advantage of that decorative edge and use it in your project. Another benefit to Baltic Birch is that it has a much thicker veneer than, say, something like this pre-finished birch here. And finally, the piece that we are going to be edge banding today, which is a piece of rift-sawn white oak, but it is not plywood, it is an MDF core. So there's two things that I want to focus on with this piece, which are also benefits to using a material like this. And one is the consistency in grain and color that you can get on one of these sheet goods because they are manufactured. So as you can see here, we have this beautiful straight grain, and let's say that I wanted to build two doors on top of each other, and I wanted to have that perfect grain flowing from bottom to top. A sheet good is a perfect application for that. Speaking of doors, by edge banding this MDF panel, I can now have what appears to be a solid piece of oak, and since it's an MDF core, it's going to be a lot more stable than if I was to build it out of hardwood. Since the sheet goods come in different materials, well, so does the edge banding. And we have various different types of edge banding here. You can get it in any size imaginable, in various thicknesses, in various species, and also material. What we have here, this is a PVC material, which would be used on something like melamine. And then we also have birch, we have walnut, and we have rift-sawn white oak to match the rift-sawn panel. So you really have a lot of options to get the look that you are going for. So now let me show you how we go about edge banding and transforming the edge of this piece of material. The first thing we want to do is let's secure our piece of material to our table just so it doesn't move around on us. Now we're going to apply the edge banding. The first step is always you want to measure just how big of a piece you're going to need for the project. There's various different ways that you can do this, but a very easy, quick method is to just take your piece, give yourself about 2 inches or so on each end in this application using this edge banding machine, and then snapping it to break it off. For this edge banding application, I am going to be using the Festool Conturo, which is an edge banding machine, and it does one thing. It applies edge banding very, very well. To use the machine, we do have to make sure that we load the edge banding into it, and we're ready to go. From this point forward, it's just going to feed through the machine. Now, as I'm going across, I'm just maintaining pressure because I want to make sure that the glue adheres to the surface. Now, it's only been a few seconds and the glue itself is already dry to the touch. So what we want to do here is we want to use the trimmer so we can flush cut that edge banding. We obviously don't want the edge banding protruding past the material. So to do that, we just use this trimmer, place it on, pull the handle, and now I have a perfectly flush piece of edge banding. Earlier I'd mentioned that the edge banding itself comes in all kinds of different configurations. You can get different thicknesses, you can get different species, you can get it finished, you can get it unfinished. Well, you can also get it in different widths. And the purpose of that is to make sure that you're exceeding the width of the material that you're using to ensure that you get a nice, perfect, flush edge. And as you will see here, we do have a little bit of overhang on both the top and the bottom. Now, how do we combat that? My favorite way is to use a router in this configuration, and it is going to give me a perfectly flush surface from the top of the material to the edge of the material. Now, if set up correctly, from there you can take your finger and you can run it down and see if you are a perfectly flush finish. Now, there are instances sometimes because there are valleys and undulations in the wood, and that bearing is going to follow that, and the plate is going to follow that. So there might be a couple areas where you have a little bit of residual glue, or maybe it is a little bit proud in some cases, and the way you take care of that is by just using something like this. This is just a carbide scraper, and what it's going to do is make sure that I have a nice clean edge. All the glue and the residue is removed, and it is a perfect transition from the top to the edge. Finally, one other thing that I like to do with my edge banding is I don't want that super sharp edge, which is caused by using that router bit. You're gonna get a really, really sharp edge, and I just like to break it up just a little bit. And the way to do that is just take a hand sanding block or sponge and just give it a quick pass right over the edge and just break up that sharp edge. Once that's done, we can flip this over and we can do the same thing to get that nice flush edge on the other side. And now the edge of this panel is complete, and as you can see, we have a beautiful edge to cover the ugly MDF part that you saw before. And looking at this, it would be a very, very nice piece of material to use as something like a cabinet door. It's also protected now with the edge banding on it. So by learning how to apply edge banding and what the benefits are, it really can probably help elevate your projects moving forward, because being able to use a material like this really, really expands your capabilities. And I would even argue it expands the quality of the pieces that you're making. Hopefully you guys found that video helpful. Thanks for watching.